The study began in 96 to 98 and it recruited a large group of men, 12,000 men, for a study looking at the effectiveness of screening for abdominal aortic aneurysms. So the 12,000 men originally came to have their aorta screened, that's the major blood vessel coming from the heart, to see if it had grown to a larger than expected diameter. But at the time, those men also filled in a questionnaire, and we have been following them ever since. So we've been following those 12,000 men who came from the Perth region. They were aged 65 to 80 years of age in 96 to 98. And then the next thing that we were very fortunate to do was to actually get some more money, which resulted in another questionnaire and survey done between the years of 2002 and 2004, where the men came for a repeat survey, but also for the first time they had a blood test. And we had a blood test in just over 4,000 men, 4,300 men. And that allowed us to do all sorts of things on their blood tests, as well as continuing to follow them on the data linkage system. We can look at things as simple as added salt, the amount of physical activity that the men do, what their leisure time habits. So one of the things that we looked at was computer use. So we've been able to do all sorts of things and look at the effects on a diverse range of outcomes. So we look at obviously mortality, but we also look at cardiovascular disease, strokes, cancer. And we've been very involved in this group of men in the mental health outcomes, again, which is allowed by the richness of the data set. One of the things that received a lot of media attention was the fact that we found that overweight men lived longer than men who were normal weight. So that we found that once you get to your 70s, if you're overweight, your body mass index is above 25, in the range of 25 to 30, that actually means that you will live longer than if you had a body mass index which was 20 to 25. And because of the richness of the data, we were able to adjust for all the things that people thought were important, like pre-existing diseases. That's why people lose weight, and that might have been the explanation where we'll be able to look at that. We were able to look at the different outcomes, not just dying, but what they died from and what they were prone to. So it meant that not only were we able to find that the central finding, but we were able to make sure that it wasn't caused by problems with the data or with the things that might have been associated with losing weight. At various parts of the surveys, we've actually looked at sexual activity, which was an unheard of area in this group of in this age group, and so very few studies had been done, and we looked at we were able to look at sexual activity, its prevalence, how many men were involved, and the effects of testosterone and other factors. And of course, the unsurprising findings were that the most important things for sexual activity were actually the general health of the men and the general health of their partners. Those people who are sedentary for virtually any reason, those people do worse than the people who aren't. And one of the things that I personally found to be striking was that the physical activity story was most important really early on, so that it's doing a little bit of physical activity in the day rather than doing nothing. But one of the things we also found was that as the men grow older, that some of the traditional risk factors weren't so important, and particularly things like cholesterol and other factors. One of our colleagues came up with the idea, well, what do you think the computer use does for cognition and dementia later on in life? And so we decided to look at it, and we had the information available, and we found that the computer use decreased the risk. And it seemed to decrease the risk many years before the development of the dementia. The men are still going, and a lot of them are returning for surveys, and they're very much part of the study. And one of the things that we find now is we're finding more and more information about what predicts good health in your 90s, because a lot of the men are reaching into their 90-year-old periods, and some of them are ill and too ill to have another survey. But a lot of them can, and they love showing off, and they love showing just how good they are. Everybody wants to age well. We all want to have a productive and useful old age as well as younger years. And as we all live longer, this is what we want. We don't want our last 20 years of life to be miserable and unhelpful. We want to be engaged, fit, active, and that's what we find with a lot of these men. And we're trying to work out the secret to it.